I call this story Beer is the Answer, and here's why. After my initial assignment as an engineer in a furniture company, I was offered my first supervisory position at a small ceiling grid manufacturer just outside of Chicago. Now, the first few weeks in this role, I spent most of my time on the factory floor getting to know my crew and the process of making ceiling grid, which is made out of metal. What I noticed was it appeared to me that there was more scrap being generated than good ceiling grid being put in boxes for the customer. And this really bothered me because we were only getting pennies on the dollar from the metal recyclers that took our scrap. So I decided to talk with my crew about it and see if we could come up with ways to reduce the scrap rate and start to make more money for the factory. So I sat down with my crew and I kind of gave them the analysis of the losses in a percentage way and a cost way. And I could see that the crew didn't seem all that interested in the numbers because it didn't really make meaningful sense to them. When I asked them what they thought the issues were and how they could help, they to a person told me they were doing the best they could and they knew that scrap rates were lower in the past and weren't really sure what might have changed. After the crew meeting was over, I spoke with someone in the plant that had been a supervisor before I arrived, and he told me that he thought that this issue might have to do with the fact that most of the staff had turned over in the past year or so, and there really wasn't a strong connection to the crew to work together and rally together. Well, this bothered me because I knew I was always going to be new, but I needed to make a connection to the crew. So I started to think about why percentages don't really matter. And I was trying to figure out how I could get the crew interested and involved enough in scrap reduction that it would be meaningful. One afternoon on a Saturday, I was grocery shopping with my wife. And I noticed that in the grocery store, unlike where I lived in North Carolina, you could buy groceries as well as beer, wine, and liquor. Well, this was a revelation to me, and it sparked an idea. So I did a little research, and what I found out was beer could be thought of as similar in value to some of the grid we were making. So, armed with this new energy and thought, I held my next crew meeting the following week. Instead of talking about our scrap percentages, I challenged my team and helped them understand that 1 2-foot bar of grid had the same value as a beer, a bottle of beer. A 4-foot bar of grid had the same value as 2 bottles of beer. And a 12-foot grid main runner had the same value as a 6-pack. And I said to my team, I said to my crew, if we were able to cut scrap in half, we could throw a party like the company has never seen. Now this got them laughing, and they started to talk to each other a little bit in terms of beer. And I knew that we might be onto something. Over the next few days and weeks, I would have conversations with each team member and crew member about how much beer they could save and how much beer they were saving. And after a while, they started to talk to me about beer and the value of beer. And I started to notice that the scrap in the scrap carts was going down. One day I knew I had made a true breakthrough when one of our setup technicians proudly walked up to me and told me he had just done the setup properly on the first try, and he saved over a keg of beer because of it. I knew we were going to win. And from then on, that's all we talked about: how much beer we were saving, how much beer we could buy for the party, and scrap rates started coming down. By the time I left that factory, scrap rates were below their historical lows and had been reduced by more than 75%. Even the person who had been the supervisor in the past had to remark that by using beer, everyone was able to connect to that and truly value reducing scrap. I hope this story provided you with some inspiration to revisit your own processes. I have a lot more I'd like to share. Head over to pi-partners.com to learn how I can help. And check back from time to time for more Kaizen stories.